Good afternoon, Dana. Yes, last day. We've made it all the way to Friday. Okay,
Woohoo!
everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you for coming back and joining us after a long week. We're happy to have you guys back. You guys know I'm Cora Anthony, the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. So if you guys need any help, please feel free to shoot me an email. And our disclaimer, this virtual training provides a summary of fundamental concepts and requirements and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed, sorry, I gotta let everybody in. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. So if you have any particular questions, please feel free to jot those down into the chat box. Now, I am muting everybody on entry, so everybody's on mute. But if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat box and I will make sure to let Cheryl know. I see, Joyce, you have a question? I see you raised your hand. Yes? No? Maybe? Joyce?
Maybe she's just practicing raising her hand.
Oh, yes, she said, sorry, no. Okay, I'll go ahead and put that down for you.
She's saying, yeah, it's Friday. No.
So for your questions and concerns, if you are on the web browser, just hover your mouse over and you'll see the chat function pop right there next to the leave button. And if you're like me and you are on the desktop app, it's going to be on your upper right corner. And it's just going to look like a little chat bubble. Please feel free to jot down any questions that you might have. Okay. So without further ado, I'm trying not to take up much of your time this beautiful Friday. Cheryl, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Okay. Now, as long as I don't hit the leave button. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool beans. It still does that. Sorry, close your eyes. It keeps wanting to go to the bottom where I was working. Okay. There we go. Happy December. 5th day, we did it. Here's my little smiley lights. Sending up smoke and prayers. And there's my info if you guys ever need to get a hold of me for anything. Reminding you again, we are getting recorded. I'm Cheryl. I'm from Bay Mills. 30 some years doing this. You guys know our objectives. You know about the questions. Today, we're going to cover contract administration, environmental assessments and reviews, sub-recipient versus contractor. We had somebody interested in that at one point. Procurement checklist for files, procurement procedures, contract file arrangement, and utilizing federal supply sources in procurement. Remind you to grab your appendix documents. They could be helpful to you in the future, if not right now. And our first one is contract administration. So the award or purchase leads to a contract, hopefully, and the contract should always, always in writing. Your contracts are always supposed to be in writing. The contract form can be made part of your solicitation if you want. And the level of your detail depends on the circumstances and what type of procurement you're actually doing. Awarding of a contract, remember, responsive and responsible. Always look for that with the lowest bid. Compare with your price analysis, comply with your preferences, carefully scrutinize and document everything. Check your bid bonds and things like that. Make sure that they have valid insurance and do your due diligence with all that stuff. If you're a small housing authority, please go ask for help. Don't wing it. You cannot negotiate and can reject any and all bids for good reason. Oops, wrong way. Your contracts can use conventional contract forms and invoices, or you can use recipient approved contract forms and get Legal advice before signing them. Your procurement officer transfers the administration over to a contract manager if you're in a big enough housing entity. The majority of us, the contracting officers, with it all the way through, but in some of the larger housing entities, there's also, besides the contracting officer, there's a procurement officer, and an administration to you've got a contract manager there, and sometimes inspectors and all of that too. So the purpose and the importance of your contracts is to clearly define the expectations for all the parties in the contract, incorporates your terms that protect your right to get goods or services delivered promptly and properly, to dispute avoidance, and you have your dispute resolution provisions. You have to ensure all your solicitations and pre-contract terms have been complied with. The contract can be a one-page invoice or dozens and dozens of pages, executed by the contracting officer. Use recipient approved, HUD contract forms. AIA, excuse me, AGC, HUD. Get legal advice always before signing. Competitive proposal contracts. Your professional services contracts are often based on an hourly rate. You can find more information under 200-318. Time and materials contracts. Remember, they don't provide any positive profit incentive to your contractor for cost control or labor efficiency. Therefore, each contract must set a ceiling price that the contractor exceeds at their own risk. Requires a high degree of oversight by you as the non-federal agent entity. That's the one we try to tell you to avoid. Awarding of the contract. You can reject any and all proposals. Remember that, for a sound, and you got to document that reason. Negotiations of a contract are allowed under certain circumstances. Cost and price analysis are required. Contract and project management. See, these are what our beaches look like. We have rocks everywhere. They're beautiful, they're agates, but they're kind of hard to walk on in the majority of places. So after you execute that contract, in some cases, you would issue a notice to proceed. You ensure your contractor's compliance with all your startup obligations, and the administration again would be transferred over to that procurement officer, from the procurement officer to your contract manager. It's important for you to follow up compliance during that performance, enforcement during the performance. Procurement evolves basically into contracting and contract administration, and you need coordination between your procurement and your program staff. Overlap of contract management and project management. Contract management ensures fulfillment of contract requirements, of all contractor obligations and payment for work or services delivered. Project management is the process of completing the project by the contractor and meeting the recipient objectives, assuring work being done accordingly and within your contracted amount and timeline. Contract manager or contract officer works in coordination with your project manager throughout the contract to close out. Post-award procedures. You would hold a post-award conference. You issue that notice to proceed if applicable. You monitor your contractor performance and compliance, the receipt of supplies, services, construction, monitoring of inspection of your supplies, services, or construction, and the acceptance of which, payment of work completed and accepted. And that's what I was trying to write down here, that I wanted to make sure that I hit upon you, because I can't remember if I put it in this course material. Retainage. Make sure you keep retainage, and they're going to come after you when they get to the end of the project, and they're going to want you to release the retainage. Don't release all of your retainage until you've gone through that whole punch list procedure. You give them no incentive to come back and finish their work if you're not holding any of their money. So always, always, always keeps, even a little bit, keep some retainage till the end, till you've gone through your punch list process. Otherwise, they'll be gone. So acceptance of supplies, services, construction, payment of work completed and accepted, exercise of any applicable options for additional quantity or time period, project and contract completion, and project and contract closeout. This is what our water looks like in most spots. So now you can see why it's hard to walk sometimes while you're swimming. So environmental assessments and reviews. Mental should be an environmental. That's some of my least favorite parts. Make sure that you have somebody within the tribe that knows what they're doing and how to take care of this process. If you're from a smaller place, you might have somebody with the competence and the time to go through all the training for this, but you can get literally spanked for not doing it properly. If you're from a smaller tribe, if you've got a biology staff, you can pay for someone else's training. You can use somebody within the tribe, reach out early before you need it to be done. You're signing off on a yearly basis that your environmentals have all been done, make sure that you've got somebody that's competent at doing that. So who does them? What's the importance of that timely completion? The HUD forms, it's supposed to be done before you actually get your request for your release of funds. And your consequences are, you're not supposed to be spending any money until those are done. This is a really, really important piece of that puzzle. So make sure that you have somebody trained to do that. And it's a boring subject, no HUD funds can be expended or obligated without appropriate level of environmental reviews. Even if they're exempt or whatever, somebody's got to be putting that in writing and filling out those forms to say this is an exempt part of a project. Your information is under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. Proper documentation must be filed. You can find additional information at 1024. If an Indian tribe assumes environmental review responsibility, how will HUD assist the Indian tribe in performing the environmental review? So as set forth in section 105A 2B of NAHASDA, and then 24 CFR 5877, HUD is going to provide for monitoring of environmental reviews. They'll also facilitate training. So NIHC puts on trainings, NLC puts on trainings, and if there's not one coming up, you can always put in a request to NLC or NIHC to provide somebody to give you training on environmental reviews. But make sure you have somebody that's went through this process. So they'll also facilitate the training for the performance or such reviews by Indian tribes. So what environmental review requirements apply? The environmental effects of each activity carried out with NAHASDA assistance must be evaluated in accordance with the provisions of the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969. And the related authorities listed in HUD's implementing regulations at 24 CFR 50 and 58. This is one of the other very few times that you get away from those three books: Indian preference, environmental reviews. An environmental review does not have to be completed prior to HUD approval of an IHP. Is an Indian tribe is the tribe required to assume environmental review responsibilities? No. It's an option an Indian tribe can choose. If an Indian tribe declines to assume the environmental review responsibilities, HUD will perform the environmental review in accordance with 24 CFR Part 50. The timing of the HUD undertaking of the environmental review will be subject to the availability of resources. A HUD environmental review must be completed for any NAHASDA assisted activities, not excluded from review under 24 CFR 50.19. Before a recipient can acquire, rehabilitate, convert, lease, repair, or construct property, commit HUD or local funds used in conjunction with such NAHASDA assisted activities with respect to that property. The thing about asking HUD to perform your environmental reviews is they don't really have a lot of resources to do that. So you could be way, way behind the eight ball. I don't know of any tribes that actually use that option. 1020 is an Indian tribe required to assume environmental review responsibilities. So if an Indian tribe assumes those environmental review responsibilities, its certifying officer must certify that he or she is authorized and consents on behalf of your Indian tribe and such officer to accept the jurisdiction of the federal courts for the purpose of enforcement of the responsibility of the certifying officer as set forth within Section 105 of NAHASDA, and that the Indian tribe has to follow the requirements of 24 CFR Part 58. The certifying officer is the chief executive officer of the tribe. That's not your contracting officer. A certifying officer is your chairperson. The CEO may also be another tribal officer who has been formally delegated within writing for that responsibility by your governing body to act on behalf of the tribe in the environmental review process. Section 105 of NAHASDA and Section 104 of HCDA, the CO is the primary environmental decision maker with the authority to approve or reject projects. He or she is authorized to execute a certification of environmental compliance and to request release of funds from HUD when required. Requests are submitted to HUD on Form 7015.15 entitled Request for Release of Certification. But at that point, that's when you need that signature from your tribal leadership about the environmental review process. The CO has specific legal functions and responsibilities that include assuming the role of your responsible federal official under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and related federal laws and authorities within 24 CFR 58.5 and representing the tribe, being subject to the jurisdiction of the federal courts concerning the execution of your NEPA requirements and the related federal laws and authorities, 24 CFR 58.13. These responsibilities cannot be assumed by other staff or those temporarily acting on behalf of the CO in his or her absence. An additional role of the CO is to ensure that the tribe reviews and comments on all environmental impact statements prepared for a federal project that might have an impact on your recipient's program, in accordance with 24 CFR 5813. No funds can be committed to a grant or an activity or a project before the completion of that environmental review and approval of the request for release of funds and related certification required by sections 105B and 105C of NAHASDA, except as authorized by 24 CFR Part 58, such as for the cost of environmental reviews and other planning and administrative expenses. Where an environmental assessment, which is called an EA, is appropriate under 24 CFR Part 50, instead of an Indian tribe assuming environmental review responsibilities under paragraph B of this section, or HUD preparing the EA itself. Under paragraph A of this section, an Indian tribe or TDHE may prepare an EA for HUD review. In addition to comply with the requirements of 40 CFR 1506.5A, HUD shall make its own evaluation of the environmental issues and take responsibility for the scope and content of the EA in accordance with 40 CFR 1506.5B. Fun stuff, guys. A tribe or recipient may request that the secretary waive the requirements under section 105 of NAHASDA. The secretary may grant the waiver if the secretary determines that a failure on the part of a recipient to comply with the provisions of this section will not frustrate the goals of NEPA or any other provision of law that furthers the goal of that act. It doesn't threaten the health or the safety of the community involved by posing an immediate or long-term hazard to the residents of your community, is a result of an inadvertent error, including an incorrect or incomplete certification provided under section 105 of NAHASDA, and may be corrected through the sole action of the recipient. Are the cost of environmental reviews an eligible costs? Yes, they are. The cost of completing the environmental review are eligible. So, anybody have any questions on that one? Hearing none. What is not procurement? Subgrants, joint venture agreements that you control, and investments. So, contractor or a vendor versus subrecipient. The relationship needs to be determined so you can follow the proper rules. A subrecipient and contractor determination is found under 200.330. You are to make a case-by-case determination whether each agreement that you make casts the party receiving the funds in the role of a subcontractor or a contractor, excuse me, or a subrecipient. So the characteristics of a subrecipient, they determine who is eligible. The performance is related to the objectives of a federal program. They're responsible for programmatic decision making. They're responsible for compliance with your federal program requirements. They can use those funds for a public purpose per the program rather than just providing goods or services. The purpose of a subaward. A subaward is for the purposes of carrying out a portion of your federal award. A subaward definition means an award provided by a pass-through entity to a subrecipient for the subrecipient to carry out part of your federal award received from the pass-through entity. It does not include payments to a contractor or payments to an individual that is a beneficiary of that federal program. A subaward may be provided through any form of legal agreement, including an agreement that the pass-through entity might consider as a contract. So, compliance responsibilities. The TDHE, the subrecipient. The subrecipient. Contractor determinations. Purpose of a contract. A contract is for the purpose of obtaining goods and services, creates a procurement relationship with that contractor. The characteristics of a contractor relationship. They provide you goods and services within normal business operations. They provide goods and services to many different people. They normally operate within a competitive environment. They provide goods and services that are ancillary to the operation of a federal program. And they're not subject to any compliance requirements of your federal program. Compliance responsibilities, the TDHE has them, the contractors do not. So Use judgment in making determinations. The recipient has to use judgment in classifying each agreement as a subaward or a procurement contract. The substance of the agreement is more important than the form of the agreement. All the characteristics of a subrecipient and or a contractor may not, necessarily be present. There could be a couple of them. So this scenario, this is called tall grass TDHE. And you, the tall grass TDHE, are constructing 6 new housing units. 2 of the new housing units will be going to family members of the tribal administrator, who's pressuring you as the TDHE to get the units completed as quickly as possible. Winter is rapidly approaching. Citing this as an emergency situation, the TDHE makes a phone call to Black Contracting, a local non-Indian contractor known for getting projects done ahead of schedule, and hires them to build 2 of the units. For the remaining 4 units, the TDHE advertises for bids from an Indian contractor only in a regional newspaper on September 1st. Bid opening was to be held on September 25th at 10 a.m. 4 contractors submitted bids prior to the bid opening. However, Bob Smith Construction arrived with his bid at 10:10 a.m. John Smith, the contracting officer and brother of Bob Smith, accepted all the bids. All of the bidders qualified for Indian preference. They have adequate performance records, and none of them are on the debarred list of contractors. The contract is awarded to Hall and Company, the lowest bidder. So, you're the TDHE compliance officer. You're conducting a review, a self-monitoring of this procurement activity, which you guys are supposed to do. Remember, start doing those before your APR is due. What findings or observations will you make in your report? You guys want to start typing stuff in the box, and do you want to start reading them to me, my girl? Anybody got anything? Anything wrong with this scenario?
As soon as I fit.
So 6 new units. 2 of them are going to the family of the tribal administrator.
Okay, we have one answer that says a late bid.
Okay. Anybody else?
Another one says bid from Bob Smith should not have been accepted due to the late bid.
Correct. Anybody else? Anything else wrong with this scenario?
We said one of the findings is using Black contracting, no Indian preference made, conflict of interest. And then another person said contracting officer is also brother of the bid person. First off, the family should not get preference, must have admission procedures.
Good job. Okay, you guys got it. So the construction of the 2 units shouldn't have been determined in an emergency situation. The non-competitive method of procurement should not have been used. The tribal administrator should not have been involved in the procurement process at all due to a conflict of interest. Indian preference was not implemented in the procurement process for the construction of the 2 units. Regarding the procurement process used for the construction of the 4 units, the bid from Bob Smith Construction should have been rejected as it was submitted after the 10 a.m. deadline. John Smith, the TDHE's contracting officer, should have determined that all 6 units should have been constructed under one contract. John Smith also has a conflict of interest under 2 CFR 200 and should have recused himself from the bidding process. Good job, guys. Okay, I'm going to do one more. You, the Blue Moon TDHE, conducted a cost analysis of your 6-unit rehabilitation project. Determined that it would cost approximately $122,000. To arrive at this estimate, the TDHE requested a quote from Lucky's Hardware, the only hardware store on the reservation, for the lumber and the supplies, which totaled $50,000. On May 10th, the TDHE published an invitation for bids in the local newspaper, which was restricted to Indian contractors. The public opening of the sealed bids was held May 14th. 3 Indian contractors submitted bids: K&D Construction, Larry Bird, and Brown and Company. K&D's bid was for $128,500. Larry Bird submitted a bid for $129,680, but did not include the bid bond required for the project. Brown and Company submitted a bid for $126,300. All 3 bidders qualified for Indian preference. They have adequate performance records, and none of them are on the debarred list of contractors. All 3 bids included a photocopy of the quote the TDHE received from Lucky's Hardware for lumber and supplies for $50,000. Blue Moon awarded the contract to K&D Construction and then negotiated the contract down to $126,000. You are the TDHE compliance officer. You're conducting a review or self-monitoring of that procurement activity to prepare for a HUD management audit. What findings and or observations are you going to make in your report? Anybody commenting for me yet? What's wrong with this scenario?
We have why or how did each of the contractors get a copy of the supply quote from Lucky's Hardware? No negotiating, no bond for Larry Bird. Anything else, guys?
Nothing?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's about it.
So the TDHE could have considered using the small purchase method of procurement rather than the sealed bid if the estimated amount of $122,000 is less than the TDHE's established simplified acquisition threshold. The quote from Lucky's Hardware should not have been included in the invitation for bids. So somebody got that one. The bid from Larry Bird should have been determined non-responsive because it didn't include the bid bond. The TDHE should not have negotiated the price down with K&D Construction. If the $126,300 bid from Brown and Company was within the TDHE's budget for the project, the contract should have been awarded to Brown and Company because it was the lowest responsive bid. Or that all bids would be rejected as they exceeded the $122,000 estimated project cost based on the TDHE cost analysis. The other thing about that is they put that out for bid with a 4-day response window. That is not acceptable. Okay, so back to sub-recipients and contractors. A classification checklist. So the uniform guidance implements definitions of a contractor and a sub-recipient. Generally, determination of the relationship with the external entity is verified through a review of proposals, budgets, other related documents. When the relationship remains unclear, this form can be used to provide assistance in making an accurate determination and providing documentation of your decision made. Definition from the uniform guidance. Subrecipient means a non-federal entity that receives a subaward from a pass-through entity to carry out part of a federal program, but does not include an individual that's a beneficiary of such program. A subrecipient may also be a recipient of other federal awards directly from a federal awarding agency. A contractor, you find that under 200.23. A contractor means an entity that receives a contract as defined in 200.22 contract. Contract means a legal instrument by which a non-federal entity purchases property or services needed to carry out the project or program under a federal award. So there's a checklist in your addendum, and this is kind of, what you would use for your determination, or a sample, something that you could use for a sub-recipient versus contractor. Complete the sections 1 and 2, marking all characteristics that apply to outside entity receiving your federal funds. The section with the greatest number of marked characteristics, and I can't say that word right, guys, indicates, because it's Friday, the likely type of relationship the entity will have with the agency. On occasion, there could be exceptions to the type of relationship indicated by the checklist. In these situations, the substance of the relationship should be given greater consideration than the form of the agreement between your agency and your outside entity. Section 3 should be used to provide documentation on the use of judgment in determining the proper relationship classification. So you'd put the name of the entity, the contract number, the CFDA number. Okay, Section 1, sub-recipient. A subaward is for the purposes of carrying out a portion of your federal award, creates a federal assistance relationship with the subrecipient. The characteristics which support the classification of the non-federal entity as a subrecipient include when the non-federal entity determines who is eligible to receive the federal assistance. They measure performance based on meeting objectives of your federal program, responsible for programmatic decision-making. They're responsible for ensuring federal requirements outlined in the award are followed. And they use federal funds to carry out a program of the organization as opposed to providing goods or services. So under this scenario, that's a subrecipient. They're eligible to receive assistance. They're going to measure performance. They're measured on what they do. They're responsible for the decision making of that program. Your contractor doesn't decide who does what. Is responsible for ensuring federal requirements are outlined and followed, that you're compliant. And they use federal funds to carry out a program of the organization as opposed to providing just a good or services. So a contractor, you're going to check more of this box. They provide goods and services within normal business operations. They provide similar goods to many different people. Normally operate in a competitive environment. They provide goods or services that are ancillary to the operation of your federal program. And it's not subject to compliance requirements of the federal program as a result of that agreement. Now, the only other time where that kind of gets fuzzy is a contractor is required to be compliant with requirements of a federal program when it comes to Davis-Bacon, okay? That's the only one that I would confuse there and take that one out of the picture. So your optional section is use your judgment. So in determination whether an agreement between a pass-through entity and another federal entity casts the latter as a subrecipient or contractor, the substance of the relationship is more important than that form of that agreement. All of the characteristics above may not be present in all the cases, and the pass-through entity, you have to use your judgment in classifying each agreement as a subaward or a procurement contract. And this is where you would explain your rationale as to why you picked somebody as either a contractor or a subrecipient. So you make your final determination. They're a subrecipient or a contractor. Two of you within your program should do this. So maybe your contracting officer and your ED, or, but two people within your program, and I'd have the same people do it all the time so they get used to it. So Elk Hill Housing Program. They're constructing their first rental housing project ever. They think having a maintenance performed by another housing entity near the project would be the best approach to maintain that project. Are they a contractor or would they be a sub-recipient? They think having the maintenance performed by another housing entity. So they're going to be given, it would be like me giving money, Bay Mills giving money to Sioux Tribe 20 miles away because my project's closer to them over there. Anybody putting anything in the box?
Uh,
I'm going to give you the hardest one first, I think.
Okay, so we have one per contractor. No, we're at tie. Two per contractor, two say sub-recipient. So we need a tiebreaker, guys. Which one is it?
And
Oh, we have, I think we're still tied.
that's all right. And you should be. That's good. And the answer is it could be either in that situation. It's a matter of judgment. It is goods and services relationship, or is it performance related to your program? So in that one, that was a really, okay, we're going to give you one that should be a lot easier. The First People's Housing Department is expanding their operation by providing housing in the remote region of their service area. To reduce administrative costs associated with travel, they think it would be more cost effective to have a property management firm located near the project manage the lease and the occupancy of the housing development. What do you think? Contractor or sub-recipient?
Right off the bat. We have 3 saying sub-recipient.
Okay. And those 3 are correct. The answer is sub-recipient. They're doing the management. They're putting the people in there. They're making the decisions. Any questions on that? Okay. Procurement checklist information for your procurement files. So, under micro purchase, procurement method used, description of items, services to purchase, the vendor selected, was the cost reasonable, purchase order or contract, did you use the NBM preference, did you check the debarred list, complete, the date you did it, and who verified that that's done, initials. Please provide comment if needed regarding any variance from the standard procurement procedures, such as why a different method of procurement was used or why multiple bids could not be obtained. So this is something that you would put within your files to start checking to make sure you're doing things correctly. Same thing, small purchase. What method did you use? The description of the item or the services that you were going to purchase. The number of quotes you received. Which vendor did you select? Was the cost reasonable? Was it a purchase order or a contract? Did you use Indian preference? Did you check the debarred list? Please provide comment if needed regarding the variance from the standard procurement. You know, you can kind of use this, but you're going to need a little bit more paperwork in there, but that's in there. And if you were to check your own files, that would be part of your self-monitoring. But if you had somebody going in there and doing it when you actually did your procurement, you'd be way ahead of the game. If you went and did it as part of your self-monitoring and picked a third of your files, you'd be really doing a good job self-monitoring. But this is a good idea. Put something like this within your filing system for your own monitoring. Same thing with your sealed bid. And the more money you spend, the more things you have to verify. Amendments, if any. Vendor rejected and why. Indian preference came into it now. Potential bidders requesting a bid package. Did you have a pre-bid conference? Invitation for bids, were they public? As you see, some of the requirements, there's more. A request for proposal, was it public? Did your request for proposal include evaluation factors? The proposals that you received, were they complete? Did you do an evaluation? Did you have any amendments? So these are all questions that you should have with each procurement and each procurement type. If you did sole sourcing, what was that reason? Did you get your HUD approval as required? So you could use those, and I would welcome you to build upon that, use that if you have to, So procurement procedures, you start your procurement, you determine your requirements of your procurement, you prepare in advance your procurement plan. Use cooperative purchasing methods if available. Is there a public emergency? If there is, you might have to jump down to non-competitive proposals. Pre-qualifications or potential bidders, proposers for Indian preference. Trying to get you to look at everything that goes into here to make sure that you hit all those steps. Prepare your specs, your statement of works, your independent cost estimates. For construction projects, prepare your manuals with front-end documents and drawings. The more money you spend, the more prep work you should be doing and giving yourself the most leeway that you can. Budget funds, send it to your contracting officer for review and concurrence. If below a small purchase limit, make the purchase using an informal phone, fax, or mail solicitation. If competitive, prepare your evaluation criteria and your point scale. Got to issue a solicitation, including Indian preference applications. Are you going to hold a pre-bid proposal conference if needed? You got to make that determination on your Indian preference applications if they come in. If you only have one bid or proposal, are you going to re-advertise? What steps are you going to take? This is what you would do for sealed bid. So these are to make you think about your different forms of procurement and the steps that you need to take. Conducting cost analysis. Are you allowed to conduct a negotiation? Revise or receive and evaluate a revised proposal, if any. So post-award procedures, what you do at that point. Warranty work is a huge thing, and it seems like, oh my God, we finally got done with this project. It's done. We could rest. We did the punch list. We did whatever. Somebody's got to be in charge of that warranty information. They have to file all those warranties. They have to put it somewhere where you can get a hold of it. Get somebody that's in charge of that also. That gets thrown by the wayside sometimes. Warranty things for housing entities quite a bit. They get ordered, nobody follows the ball from that point forward. So make sure that somebody takes care of that within your organization also. And the filing of it. There's been a lot of, at least on my part, I often weighed having a tenant file and a unit file for everything done to the unit, regardless of who the tenant was. So you would have the whole background on that particular unit. So you can say, wait a minute, I replaced the furnace in there in 2017. It shouldn't need a brand new one. And the warranty's in there too, so that's another way. I know some places that do that. They have a tenant file and they have a unit file for the unit. Just something to think about.
Hey,
So,
Cheryl, we
yes.
have a question in the chat that says, who is that usually? Accounting? And Miss Tina, you raised your hand, but I'm not sure if that's a question. If you want, you can go ahead and type that question into the chat.
Is that accounting? Is that what she asked?
James asked, who is that usually? Accounting? I'm not sure what James meant by that.
And I could see why you would say that would be accounting, because they do get a lot of the bills, but so is procurement. And that was an argument that we had. And to tell you the truth, our accountants didn't really have the construction background to know about some of those items, so it made it very hard, and it ended up part of the procurement office and my staff that did that.
Okay, he wrote it's for the warranty paperwork, so I'm assuming
Right, that's what I mean. But
Okay.
that's a determination that you should have and a conversation that you could have. Who should do this? Because if it comes to a sump pump, something like that, your procurement people are going to know what that is. Your accountant might not have a clue. as to they could think it's a furnace part, you know. That was one of the arguments we had. Some of the things that we actually procure, the accountants have no clue what they even are, let alone, you know. So that's why our procurement ended up doing a lot of the warranty send-in stuff and the filing of those documents. But they came in with the packaging too. Like I said, it's part of that same conversation as to who's going to unpack the shipping. Your construction guys are waiting to get to the stuff, and a lot of times they swipe them before they even get off the trucks because they're waiting on them. But they're supposed to be, you know, into your inventory. The packing slips are supposed to be given one place. You know, you're supposed to receipt them in. That's a whole process that sometimes gets missed. So, is there any more questions?
No, ma'am. You're good to go.
Okay, so purchasing of a printer, estimated cost of $2,800. Construction of a duplex, estimated cost $425,000. Purchase of a vehicle, your estimated cost is $22,900. You're going to procure audit services. What kind of procurement would you use for that? You're going to replace a furnace. Estimated cost is $12,300. We're going to modernize 3 different homes. We figure it's going to come out to $225,000. Purchase of a backhoe, a used backhoe. Estimated cost $5,000. Yeah, because you cannot get a new backhoe for $5,000. Anybody want to throw in there what they think they would use? Pick one, anyone, and throw it in the chat box. You getting any answers?
Am I still on mute? No? Oh,
No,
can you hear me now?
no answers?
No, we do. I don't know why it wouldn't unmute for myself.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I was clicking. I was like, can you hear me? Susan says 1 micro purchase. Tara agrees. And then 2 a sealed bid, and Joyce agrees as well.
Okay. We're just going for the first 2. Is that all we're going to answer then, guys?
3. So Susan puts 3, a small purchase. Tara agrees.
Audit services?
No, we have 4 competitive proposal and another 4 RFP.
Okay. 5. We're going to replace a furnace. $12,000. $12,300. Anybody?
So 5, they put small purchase.
Modernization of 3 homes, $225,000.
Some people are saying small purchase for number 6. Some people are saying a sealed bid.
Okay. Purchase of a used backhoe, $5,000.
We have a micro purchase for number 7.
Okay. So purchase of a printer, micro purchase, less than $5,000. Construction a duplex, estimated at $425,000. Sealed bid. Construction, it's more than your standard, your simplified acquisition threshold. Purchase of a vehicle, small purchase, more than $5,000, less than the SAT. Procurement of audit, competitive proposals, based on factors other than just price. Replacement of furnace, small purchase, more than $5,000, less than the SAT, or possibly non-competitive if an emergency existed, maybe hazardous weather conditions, for example. Remember, you got to get HUD approval for non-competitive. Modernization of 3 homes. Small purchases are okay because it's less than the SAT. However, sealed bids are preferred because it's construction work. Purchase of a used backhoe. Small purchase, more than $5,000, less than the SAT. Good job, guys. So contract file arranging. this is a way to do 10 files. So in file number 1, your contract bid folder, you would put your in-house list of contractors that you send your legal notice to, copy of your actual notice that you put in the paper, bill from the newspaper for the legal notice, copy of the bid forms, copy of the bid bonds, copy of signed representations, certifications, and other statements of bidders, copy of Indian or tribal preference documentation, copy of non-collusive affidavits, copy of your bid tabulation sheet, letter of recommendation to award the contract, and a copy of your independent cost estimate for proposed contract. I would suggest that you also put a copy of the first page on the outside of that folder so you know what would be in it for that particular project. Your second one, you'd put the copy of your cost and price analysis, documentation to support the rationale for the award, documentation to support that the contractor was checked from the suspended and debarred listing, a copy of the performance bond, a copy of the payment bond, evidence of a deposit of cash escrow of not less than the percentage of the total contract price, letter of credit for 25% of the total contract price, letter of credit, copy of the signed contract, copy of your insurance certificates, and copy of pre-construction checklist. You'd put that on your second file on the outside, and that's the documents that you would put on the inside. Your third file would hold your specifications, your contract specifications, any bidding addendums, and copy of your drawings. Always try to keep a couple of copies of your blueprints and your drawings. You're going to need them in the years to come. And you should always have one set that does not leave your office because they like to walk away. The fourth one, contract registers, your contract register, your copy of your change orders, and a copy of your progress schedules. Your fifth file would be your change orders, documents, price analysis, documentation to support the rationale, and your supporting documents. Your sixth one would be your contract payments, copy of all your payment requests and your supportive documentation. 7 is your contractor payrolls. You have to be able to prove that Davis-Bacon. I think 3 to 5 years you should be keeping those ones. Daily logs, copy of all your daily logs. 10, general correspondence and your closeout documents. Miscellaneous correspondence, final inspections, your punch list, your contract closeout documents, your copy of all your warranties, and copy of all operation and maintenance manuals. So that would be a great way if you built a file system, you'd know you have everything if you built something like that. I'm not saying that's the best one out there. I'm saying if you don't have one, maybe use that as an example. General statement. We, per 24 CFR 1026, sections in your 200 book, 318 through 326, apply as modified in this paragraph, utilizing federal supply sources and procurement. In accordance with Section 101J of NAHASDA, we as recipients may use federal supply sources made available by GSA administration pursuant to 40 U.S.C. 4501. I'm kind of curious if anybody would type, how many of you guys use GSA? I didn't find they saved as much money as I really hoped they would when I, looked into it and was able to purchase. They do have a credit card that's available that gives you some types of discounts. I thought they would save you a lot less money. The tribe was also eligible to use them, and they were able to get like heavy equipment and things like that, but like I'd end up with one of the tribal maintenance guys flying to Maine, and then they'd get something and they would drive it back, but and you have to go get the stuff usually, but they were able to get good deals that way. But I'm kind of curious, does anybody find GSA really, really good? And I can't see the chat box, so she's going to have to tell me.
So Lisa, sorry. Lisa said she used it for the first time yesterday, but no one else has shared. Deborah says it's really expensive.
Yep.
Anybody else? Any thoughts on GSA? You can type 1 to let us know if you've used it or give us your thoughts on how you feel about using it.
Just wondering, the National American Indian Housing Council for years, for I think like 3 years in a row, we had a woman that was in charge of, she was basically the Native American liaison for GSA, and she came out of, I think, Albuquerque. But she came to our meetings to help the tribes set up or teach them, and she would teach a course on how to use GSA purchasing. But I was wondering, and then I was wondering, on behalf of NLC, if they ever, thought about exploring that and teaching people how to use it. But
That's a really good thought. I'll
yeah,
make sure to bring that up.
but on the
Thomas
other
says,
hand, are they going to save you any money? So
Thomas says it does save time in procurement. Dana says she used it for the first time on Wednesday. Now, Deborah shares that it prohibits the use of small tribal businesses that do car repairs. Ken said he hasn't used GSA directly, but received GSA rates on some office furnitures from the local supplier. Dana says that she will be taking back over in January, and Stephanie shared that she signed up but never used it. Didn't
right.
see anything in our area we were interested in.
Yep, that's kind of what happened. So that would be an interesting thing, and maybe that you could think about in the future. And then I think the other component that might help the tribes is the use of perhaps a GSA credit card, and if that would help them get like a government rate on hotels and things. What we ended up doing is using our tax ID number and stuff right through our tribal. We went to our tribal enrollment, and they issued us like a federal ID using the housing authority's ID number. And that was a federal identification number, which allowed us when we were staying in a hotel to get a cheaper price. Most places, I never had it turned down in 30 years. Um, and if you look like at Marriott, there's a couple of them out there that accept federal IDs to give you a reduced rate. And that's what I would kind of like to see, to be able to, the tribes be able to save money, if they're ever going to a place, like if you go to an NLC thing, they usually have went through that whole process for you and already got you a reduced rate. But there's sometimes you don't get that, and that can make a big difference. So something to think about. So cooperative purchasing, intergovernmental procurement or joint purchasing, you can find it under 200-318. It's the GSA, General Services Administration's eBuy, a federal request for quote system, government access and surplus property acquisition. That cooperative purchasing can be used to procure material, equipment, and some services. You address it in your procurement policy. You need to apply applicable preferences, price and cost analysis. Once the award is made, normal contracting procedures apply. They have vehicle leasing. They have US or used government property, purchase card and travel cards, federal supply schedules, and information technology. Um, this is how do I get quotes from GSA vendors? There's a www.ebygsa.gov. And what can they do for you? They're a federal agency. They're a buying arm of the government. You can leverage federal purchasing power. Who can use them? Tribes and TDHCs. What are they? They pre-negotiate some contracts, pricing, warranty, environmental, delivery, and there's over 16,000 of them in place. Why would you use them? Hopefully for savings, cost, time, competition, access to the www. Apparently they meet Indian preference. Search is available for native-owned enterprises. What products and services are covered? Professional services, audits, environmental assessments, architects, and legal, I guess. And eBuy is an online request for quotes, an RFQ tool which allows authorized buyers to obtain quotes and issue orders for products and services offered by sellers on the GSA Multiple Awards Schedules program. You use eBuy for services, quality, or quantity of high dollar purchases where you're seeking a discount from contract pricing, Purchases with complex requirements, determining sources of supply, receiving quotes on blanket purchase agreements. This is a shot of what their website looked like at one point. And I think that's the end. And guys, I finished a half hour early, 25 minutes early before the question and answer. Ta-da! We made it to the end and it's Friday. How's that?
You gave us the gift of time today, Cheryl. The gift of time. So since we did end a little earlier, do you guys have any questions for Cheryl about the course? Anything that you would like to pick her brain about before we wrap things up today?
And did you enjoy the course? I'd love to see that in the chat box.
Yes, James says, nicely done. Deborah says, thank you so much, Cheryl. Happy holidays. So any feedback you guys want to give us, please, please, please do so. Thomas says, yes, that the course was good. That thank you. Hey. Let me
Trying to
see.
get you to blow up so I can see you and I can't.
There's a lot of positive. I see incredibly informative. Thank you. Yes, they enjoyed the course. Thank you so much. Great presentation, very informative. So great feedback all around.
Good
Dana
job,
says,
guys.
thank you for the materials. Jennifer says, more procurement than I thought. Thank you. I learned so much. And Tara says she enjoyed it. Very informative as well.
Wonderful, guys.
So
that warms my heart.
As we wrap up, guys, and a lot of you have done so already, but if you haven't, all of that positive feedback, we would love, 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 love to see it on our survey. So I've been pestering you guys all week with the Survey Monkey. So today is the last day I'm going to pester you guys about it. So please, 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 if you guys can complete the survey, let us know how we did, and just let us know how much you enjoyed it. We really do appreciate the feedback. And then our next, oh no, it didn't change, it didn't save, but our next training is going to be actually February 11th. And it's yes, and it's going to be a nonprofits workshop. So you're going to get a hands-on experience. If you joined us for the create your own internal controls or the grants writing, it's going to be something similar where we work on nonprofits. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. And then this week's recordings are going to be available to you guys on YouTube. Okay, so if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all of these week's recordings for you to just kind of go back over your notes and whatnot. And every other virtual training that we've done is also on YouTube. And Cheryl's favorite part, check out every upcoming event on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, and Twitter, and our Hobo Thinga podcast on Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Simplecast. And as always, it's my pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm going to hang back. If you guys have any questions, any doubts, please pop those into the chat. And thank you for joining us all week. We really enjoyed having you guys. And thank you, Cheryl.
And I will be teaching for NLC in August again. They've got me almost the whole month.
Listen, that's how much we love you, Cheryl. We just want to for ourselves. We're just gonna.
Okay, guys, have happy holidays. Stay safe.